I've asked her out 5 times in the last 2 weeks. No, that's not right. It's more than that. I've asked her countless times, just not in the same way each time. The first time, it was casual, like it wasn't important, like I didn't care whether she said yes or not. I leaned against the kitchen counter and asked if she wanted to go out for dinner. A normal question, the kind of thing couples ask, right? She looked up from her phone, gave me a small smile, but didn't answer right away. Instead, she pushed the corner of her mouth to one side and said, "Maybe tomorrow. I'm really tired today." The word stung, but I laughed it off. It wasn't a big deal. The next day, I tried again, but she was already making plans with a friend. A vague plan she couldn't quite remember the details of, but somehow, she knew it was going to be important. The pattern repeated for a few days, and then she started to make excuses. They weren't bad excuses, just the kinds of things that you'd expect someone to say when they don't want to make you feel bad, but also don't want to go with you. "I can't tonight. I have to catch up on work. I promised so and so I'd help with something. I don't feel like going out. Can we just stay in tonight?" She didn't say no, not exactly. She just said not now. Always not now. At first, I took it in stride. People get busy. People get tired. It wasn't the first time she turned me down, and it wasn't a big deal. But after a few weeks, it started to feel different. It wasn't just her saying no to dinner. It felt like she was saying no to me, to my presence, to the idea of us being together in any meaningful way. And I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just about the dinners, the movies, the little outings. It was something bigger, something more abstract. She wasn't rejecting the idea of going out. She was rejecting the idea of being with me, of sharing time, space, intimacy. That's what it felt like. I stopped asking, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I could tell she wasn't worried. She wasn't upset that I hadn't asked. I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice how easy it was for her to keep doing her own thing without even a glance in my direction. It wasn't that she was ignoring me outright, but it was almost worse than that. It was indifference. She wasn't making an effort to avoid me, but she wasn't making any effort to connect, either. She would sit across from me at dinner and look at her phone, not bothering to share a thought, a word. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply neutral, like we were both living parallel lives without any overlap. I had moments of frustration, yes, but what was more disturbing was the fascination I began to feel. I would watch her in these quiet moments, when she didn't think I was paying attention. I'd notice the way her eyes narrowed when she focused on her phone, the way her fingers would swipe lazily across the screen, completely detached from the world around her. I found myself watching her more than I should have, analyzing her every gesture like it was some kind of puzzle I needed to solve. I'd stare at the way she curled up on the couch, the way she moved through the room, her body language so casual, so disinterested. I don't know when it started, but I began to feel a strange sense of ownership over her behavior. I couldn't understand why. I didn't think I was jealous, but there was something unnerving about how she was so comfortable, so at ease without needing me, without needing anyone. There were times when I would sit on the edge of the bed after we'd finished whatever had passed for an evening together, and I would watch her sleep. I couldn't bring myself to touch her anymore. I stopped trying. I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the rejection that built up over time, the way she pulled further and further away. But there was something else too. It was like I was no longer part of the equation. I wasn't the man she wanted beside her, the one she needed to feel safe or comfortable. No, I was a stranger beside her, someone who had grown too used to the empty space in between us. Sometimes, in the dark, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder when it happened. When did we become this? A couple, but not a couple. She would drift in and out of sleep, her breathing steady, but I couldn't shake the thought. She didn't need me. She didn't need anyone. I wasn't even sure if she wanted me there. I couldn't bring myself to confront her. I didn't know what I would say. It felt ridiculous, really, to try and force her to be what she once was. It felt even more ridiculous to admit that I still wanted her to want me. I didn't want her pity. I didn't want her out of obligation. I wanted her because she had been mine, because there was a time when I could say anything to her and it would mean something. Now it felt like everything I said was met with a response that was just empty. She wasn't rejecting me in a traditional sense. She didn't argue, didn't make excuses. She simply didn't care enough to engage. And so, the nights became longer, the silence thicker. I began to leave earlier, waiting for the inevitable moment when she would simply look at me and say, "I'm fine. You can go." It became a routine. I'd ask once, maybe twice. She'd decline, and I'd leave without protest, without even looking back. And yet, each time I left, I felt something tighten inside me. It wasn't the frustration of being told no. It was something deeper, something darker. The realization that I wasn't just being rejected, I was being forgotten. There was one night when she didn't even wait for me to ask. She simply said, "I'm going to bed early tonight. You don't have to stay." Her voice was flat. I didn't respond. What was there to say? So I left, quietly, like I always did. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I was hoping for something, some kind of sign that we could get back to where we once were. But there was nothing, just the click of the door closing behind me, and I hated myself for wanting that, for wanting things to be different, for wanting her back in a way I couldn't even explain. The days drift by in silence. I'm not sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I stopped asking her. I stopped needing to. The rejection became so predictable, it was almost comforting. It was like a pattern, a rhythm I had come to know too well. The way she would look at me, not with disgust or anger, but with mild indifference. I could almost hear the words before she said them, her tone soft but firm. Maybe tomorrow, but I knew better. It wasn't a maybe, it was a polite no. But I couldn't stop noticing her. I couldn't stop watching. The way she moved through the house, the way she sat in the same chair, her eyes glued to whatever was on the screen, her body curled up in a way that felt more like defense than comfort. I began to map her routine in my head, not consciously, but it became something I couldn't ignore. I knew when she woke up without even seeing her. She would always make the bed first. She had to make it, like it was the one thing she could control. She would take her time, smoothing out the sheets with a kind of precision, as if she were ironing out her own existence. One creased corner at a time, I began to notice how she always brushed her teeth at the same time every day. 8:15 a.m. on the dot. It wasn't just the brushing, it was the way she leaned over the sink, her hair falling forward, the soft sound of the bristles against her teeth. I never asked why she did it at that time. I never said a word about it. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. There was something almost meditative about it, something routine that felt safe, almost intimate in its repetitiveness. She'd hum softly as she did it, not a real song, just a sound that seemed to fill the space between us when I wasn't looking. It became my ritual, too, waiting for that sound, that soft hum, that rhythm that signaled she was still here, still real. The rest of her day passed like this, a series of small movements I had no right to observe, but did anyway. I watched the way she opened the refrigerator, the way she pulled out the same snacks, the same drinks, never deviating from the pattern. I watched the way she walked across the room, her feet barely lifting off the floor. It was always the same, always so quiet, like she didn't even know I was watching her. She didn't need to. She was moving through her world, a world I no longer had a part in. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't tell her how much it bothered me that she didn't see me anymore. That was a lie, of course. I told myself I was fine, that it didn't matter. But deep down, I knew it did. Every small, subtle thing she did seemed to build up in me, turning into something I couldn't explain. She had become this presence, something I couldn't touch, couldn't influence. She was unreachable. It felt like I was trying to hold onto smoke, and every time I reached for it, it slipped away a little faster. I began to notice the way she interacted with other people. It wasn't that I had never noticed before, but now I studied it. The way she laughed with friends on the phone, her voice light and warm, full of care. The way she smiled when she saw someone she hadn't seen in a while, her face lighting up in a way it never did when she saw me. I wondered what they had that I didn't. I wondered if they made her feel something I no longer could. They made her feel seen, and I had become the person who just existed beside her, unnoticed, insignificant. I began to track her habits, her patterns. I knew when she would go out, when she would stay in. I knew who she would talk to, who she would avoid. I wasn't stalking her. I wasn't breaking into her phone or her emails. But I became hyper-aware of everything around her. I noticed the slightest changes in her behavior. She'd wear different clothes now. Things she used to wear when we were still together. Things I hadn't seen in a long time. She was becoming a stranger in her own skin, and I was the one who noticed it most. Sometimes, I would sit at the kitchen table, staring at the same cup of coffee that had grown cold while I watched her. She would leave the room, and I would be alone, but I could still hear her movements echoing through the house. The creak of the floorboards, the soft shuffle of her slippers. It was also quiet, so slow, and it was at those moments, sitting there, feeling the weight of my own quiet thoughts, that I realized something disturbing. I was no longer upset by it. I was numb to the silence. It had become a part of me, as much a part of my life as the cold coffee or the ticking clock on the wall. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't even feel resentment. I just felt empty. And then one day, I realized it. I had been watching her for weeks, maybe months, and she hadn't even noticed. I hadn't noticed her noticing. I had become a ghost in her life, a part of the background. I wondered when that had happened, when I had slipped so far out of her view. And yet, here I was, studying every minute of her existence. She had become my obsession, and I had become her shadow. I don't know what it meant, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn away. She was the center of everything now. She was the sun, and I was just one of the planets, orbiting her silently, without any real connection. It felt strange, unsettling, even, but I couldn't stop myself from watching. She came home earlier than usual tonight. I didn't expect it. It wasn't a big deal. Not really. I had been sitting on the couch, half watching something on TV, half lost in my thoughts. It wasn't an unusual evening, but when the front door clicked open, I felt it. A slight shift in the air, the kind of shift that happens when someone enters a room, but they're not really there, not in any meaningful way. She walked in quietly, like always. The click of the door, the shuffle of her shoes as she dropped them by the entryway. She didn't look around. She didn't check for me. She simply walked past me, her body language calm, like she was at home, but also like she didn't expect anyone to be here. I didn't say anything at first. Why would I? What was there to say? She didn't need me to say anything. She never had. She moved through the house like she had every right to be there, like there was nothing unusual about her being alone, coming and going as she pleased. I could have said something. I could have asked her how her day went, whether she wanted to talk, but I didn't. I just let her do what she always did, move through her routines. She was too far removed from me now. I didn't need to ask her anything. The distance between us was something I could never bridge, and I had grown numb to it. But then, as she passed through the living room, I said something. I don't even know why. Maybe it was because I wanted to see if she would react. Maybe it was because I was tired of the silence. You know, I said, voice barely above a whisper, your spot's taken. She paused, just for a moment, just long enough for me to catch a glimpse of her face. Her eyes flickered to the couch, then back to me. There was no question in her eyes, no curiosity, just a faint flicker of recognition, like she knew exactly what I meant, but didn't care. I didn't think you'd still be here, she said, her tone flat. She didn't ask who was sitting on the couch. She didn't ask what I meant by it. She just looked at me for a moment longer, then turned away. She didn't even bother to sit next to me. She moved to the kitchen and started opening cabinets like she was alone, like I wasn't there at all. I watched her, still, and there was a strange satisfaction in it. Not because she had come home, not because of anything she said, but because I had made her notice. Even if it was just for a second, I had made her stop. I had made her think about me again. For once, I wasn't the invisible one. She didn't react in any big way. She didn't confront me. She didn't try to figure out what I meant. She just went on with her night, as if nothing had changed. But I felt it. I felt the shift. I felt the space between us. But this time, it didn't feel so empty. It felt like I was standing in the center of it, holding it in my hands, feeling its weight. It was quiet, but I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first